Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morning Market Movers, where we do live analysis for day trading and look at hotspots in the markets for today. I am Todd Rich with Nadex. With me, as always, my good friend Brian Caprice from Keep Trading Simple. What are we looking at today? You know what? Instead of going through all of the headlines, it's really is a news-driven market. Of course, what's top of the line? The war, the sanctions, how that's going to impact Europe, how that's going to impact energy, how that's going to impact the markets. It is fluid. It is constantly changing. We'll be paying attention to that, but going through it all, there's just too much, and it's going to change instantaneously. We also had the most recent inflation numbers. Inflation is kind of holding steady, but we'll talk a little bit about how the Fed has been reacting to the news of the war and what their plans and what they've been saying they plan on doing. Before we jump into it, and we're probably just going to go ahead and jump right into the charts and start taking a look at levels. I mean, yesterday we called for those retracements and we saw all of them. It's probably good to take a step back and take a look at equities and oil again, because that's where everything is really moving, and see what kind of levels we've got for today. First up, though, is the disclaimer, because these sessions are sponsored by Nadex's compliance department, so as all of our sessions are, and that trading involves risk and may not be appropriate for everyone, that any trading decisions you make are solely your responsibility and at your own risk. And this is an educational session. Please do not construe anything Brian or I say as a buy or sell recommendation. We are doing this for your education purposes. And as I mentioned, we've got this. I mean, if we look in on yesterday, this is just the S&P, and we'll see this chart looks very similar to all the other equities, but we want to go through and take a look at levels. I mean, Nasdaq's a little bit different. I mean, each one has got their nuances to it, but going into the war, oh my God, and then okay, there's been some responses. We're seeing. I mean, last night. I mean, yesterday. Came completely back, ended up pretty solid in the green, kind of trended sideways all night, and then early this morning pushing higher, trying to take back some of the ground that we gave up on the expectations of war. So we'll take a peek here, Brian. I'm going to flip it over to you. We could talk about a few of the headlines, though, and then let's just get into the charts and take a look at what we've got for trading opportunities for today.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Yesterday we talked about a lot of the reversals, the big push, kind of the immediate response of, oh, this is all bad. But again, the market had already priced in pretty much everything, and we saw the drops, and then everything literally reversed yesterday. We looked yesterday at the pound yen, and it was down 260 something when we were talking. Now magically it's up 100. Yesterday when we were talking, right around that 10 o'clock time frame, was really kind of where the bottom was for pretty much everything. As far as news headlines go, there's not really a ton out there, in all honesty. We've had good news this morning thus far. When I say good news, I mean positive, durable good, and core durable good orders. It was actually a double where they adjusted the previous reading as well as had to increase this time. So whenever you see a double green, that tends to be really, really good. What we've heard from the Fed is right now that the Fed is pushing ahead with rate hikes. Mester yesterday talked about how, despite everything that's going on with Russia's invasion, we believe that, minus an unexpected turn in the economy, we're going to start raising next month. It's the appropriate time to start doing it. So they're kind of jumping on board, and, an unexpected turn, it's still progressing even faster. Than what the forecasts are. So all signs are that we're going ahead. There's nothing we can do, and in reality, I think that's the right call, that they're going to continue to move forward.
You look at our economy. Our economy is firing along, and again, this is that dichotomy between the stock market and the economy. Our economy is hot. There's no question about it. The stock market's taking a beating because people are afraid, and so they're selling assets. But the economy is still flying forward, and the Fed isn't looking at the stock market. The Fed's looking at the economy. So,
yeah, I mean, here's from yesterday morning. We were sitting here and we talked about the crushing nature of what gold. I mean, right now the Fed, the Fed. It's funny. I I love the supposed like Twitter experts. They're like, oh, gold. Now they're posting, gold is not a hedge for inflation. It's like, now's not the time. It's like, you're correct. You should have done it before it was here. Now that it's
Yeah.
after, post some more stories about crypto, please. These are the people that are out there, and next thing you know, they're like, my account was hacked. I didn't put that. But yeah, so I mean, gold took a pretty big hit from what we were up to 1975, and we're down at 1875 today. I mean, $100 drop, that's quite large, and you can say it's accelerating now. And the Fed, by raising interest rates, trying to crush inflation, halt it, slow it down.
Will hurt.
And those are all bearish signs. So we're seeing gold drop back down. So that's that's definitely one of the headlines, and one of the kind of back to normal. Obviously, with we're not supposed to call it the Ukrainian situation. We're supposed to call it the Russian invasion, is what Ukraine has asked us to call it at this point, and I think everybody's in agreement with it. There's really, I mean, you see a couple pictures here and there, right? How do you support them? I think overall everybody is in the, if you want to donate and help, great. Here's how you do it. France is basically saying that we are giving Ukraine 300 million euros worth of support with military aid. Other countries have also jumped on board, so everybody is really kind of supporting them. The only thing new that we've seen, again, now everybody wants to sit down and talk after Putin now told China that we're willing to have high level talks now. It's like, well, what have you done for the last three? There's been low level talks. I'm curious.
Yeah.
But now that he's on the door of the capital, now he wants to talk, and it's interesting that that Ukraine has also said the same thing. This is, I think, kind of noteworthy. I came out just about 7:15, about an hour and a half ago, talking about basically that he told the Ukraine bloc that they're working on the third level of sanctions. Now, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 12, it doesn't matter what number it is, but what they're saying is that we're going to further target Russia's energy and financial sectors. And I mentioned, if you really want to get to Russia, this is what you target. And interestingly enough, they're targeting energy, and now Putin wants to sit down and have high-level talks with Ukraine.
He didn't think that we're going to go this far. The whole world is lining up, and they're going to go after. And I think this was all planned. Here's step 1. Here's step 2. Here's step 3. And we've got more, and they're just going to keep piling on and until they choke them off. And it is, by the way, interesting that there are protesters in.
Yeah, I mean, but there's protesters for everywhere.
Well, they arrested thousands. The fact that they took in they had to arrest almost 2,000 people. That's a lot of people to arrest, because they can't arrest all of them.
Oh, it's Russia. They can. Yeah, it's Russia. They can. They have Siberia. They can arrest them all.
I mean, when I say protests, I mean inside Russia. 50 cities around Russia. They just came flooding out. Like, what the hell is going on? They're gonna. I think I mentioned that yesterday. Listen, Russia's known for having revolutions. They've got a history of it. Given time, you choke Russia off enough, and you squish their oligarch class and take away their money, where you're taking away their power. The people will rise up, and this could be. I think that this might not. I said it might be a Pyrrhic victory. It might not even be a victory at all. When all is said and done, we'll see. I'm not quite sure what Putin was really going after here, because if he honestly thought that the world wasn't going to stand against him, it appears he was wrong. So
I think he knew exactly what he was doing. But anyway, the third is they're talking about this. They're talking about cutting off coal imports from Russia, and again, not many. And this is an interesting stance. They're talking about, they debated on how to cut off coal imports. The big kind of linchpin in this has been Germany, and if watching the comments coming out of Germany, remember they're shutting down 3 nuclear plants and also trying to close their coal plants. So saying, oh, you know what, we're going to cut off coal imports. Well, you are already going to close your coal thing. So they haven't mentioned oil and natural gas yet. Those are the ones that really matter. And remember, right now, I mean, China has made one comment after another, after another, after another. They're not calling it an invasion. They're saying that this was provoked because they had genuine security concerns and we were ignored. That's their belief. Those are 2 enormous nations with a lot of people, and they have a lot of access to resources. So it's not the entire world. And I think that's important to note that you have
I'm not sure
the driving economy in the world supporting them right now. So
that's their narrative. That's the narrative they wanted to sell. I think the world got out in front of that and said, no, this is what's going on. They're going to tell this story, and so they could claim that that's what they're feeling.
I
But
mean,
I think
China's blatantly refused to call it an invasion, and they've actually criticized NATO for it. So, I mean, there's no candy coating that. That is what China is saying. So they are closer than ever. The rest of the world is allied against them. But the reality is, you have two nations that could be technically considered rogue nations out there are joining forces, and
that's
they are
the
agreeing
scary
that this
part.
is the United States part.
That's the
Yeah.
scary part, is you don't know how, if Putin becomes so destabilized, what's he prepared to do, and would he do something horrific? And that I
Yes.
don't think any of us know.
No,
Well,
I
I
think
mean,
the
would he
answer is
light
yes.
fire
I
to the
mean,
atmosphere and kill everyone in the world? He could.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's the protests are great, but I mean, yeah, there's a history of protests in the past too. The revolt is not new for Russia, and if you look at the past and follow history, the revolts don't turn out well either there, nor do they in China. So, right now, the world has to keep doing what it's doing. And again, it's interesting that after he invades, now he wants to have the high level talks. We'll see where it goes. I mean, right now, the market is not necessarily concerned. You can see yesterday the VIX completely deteriorated and dropped from the 37 mark all the way down to the 29 mark. That's a huge move in the VIX. And again, this is the VIX is not like a parabolic type retracement scenario.
no,
And again, even today at the end of the business day, you get a little bit of a pop, but it's deteriorating even more. It's at 4.45%. Yesterday, all the indices we talked about it reversing, and that's exactly what it did. Here's your 930 candle. We drew these yesterday. I haven't touched these charts. I mean, literally went straight up, and now we're pushing higher. I will say again, this was an old level. We were looking for bounces, and we got a little bit off of it. And you can see that it is actually acted as a little bit of an area of stabilization, and it kind of pushed out the bottom side and is bouncing. I would say what is a little bit concerning is we are pushing up into levels of sellers at 4340-ish area. The 4381 up top is kind of, we have a couple levels stacked up, so we do have a little bit more room. But at this point from yesterday, you can see that with this nice big drive forward, we probably will turn and roll. And again, with the Fed saying what they said, yeah, we're going forward. We're raising interest rates. So, all the factors yesterday were, oh, God, war. And then it was like, wait, it's not that bad. And then it went straight back up again. But remember, the reason why the market was already starting to come down anyway, before the Russian scenario, was the Fed taking action to kind of crush inflation. And again, look, every article right now is talking about this is what gas prices are. It's getting worse. This is what this is like. I mean, everybody is talking about inflation. The Fed is definitely a little bit behind the curve with it. Remember, all the factors that are meant to, the reason why they're not going big to crush inflation is because they're worried about crushing the stock market at the same time. So the contagion is there. It's how do we do it enough to stop it, not crush this? None of those scenarios are necessarily positive for the overall indices. And again, with them rallying up again, I would say, a little bit more of a pop. There's definitely areas of sellers here. Drop it to 15. There's no other headlines today. We don't really have to worry about any other news. I guess 10 o'clock we have consumer sentiment
news.
But yeah, but I mean, that's none of those. I mean,
you can't account for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the big news is war is here. That's it.
Yeah.
But that's out. So what are they going to say? War? Oh yeah, guess what? War is still here. That's not going to move the market.
Right.
So I wouldn't. None of those factors. I mean, I would say right now everything's going to shift back to the interest rate. So yes, you can see is rolling up. NQ also, again, it has come all the way back again. We talked about that 150% level, and you can see it chopped back and forth right through that level and ate it up. And it was just too strong, and it continued to drive even higher. And then, we had, coming in here when Messer spoke, we started to pull back, and then the overnight, we started to drive forward. But same thing. This is an area that's been tested. We're already kind of starting to pull back from it. There's a few levels here. The question is, will retail traders see all this green and be like, that's it, everything's great today? Or will they start getting back into kind of a more kind of, basic tone? I think NQ in particular, I mean, if you take low to kind of where we are right now, you can see the 50 floats kind of in the middle of the nowhere. The 23.6 has some areas there. And again, the 61.8 is definitely a level as well. So there are some levels for pullbacks that we could have bounces off of. YM, we talked yesterday about being really the one that had the most at risk. Because again, you had the war drop, but then you also had the inflationary pressure with oil, and that's why you can see that it's much, much lower down. And we drew one area, and you can see it did bounce off of that. It pulled up, and then it kind of came right back to it, kind of in those. I don't want to say Harry Potter-ish because again, when we talk about basing, it's like a 1 or 2 candle base. This is like a 12, 13 candle base, and then pull down and eventually use the area, but it's not necessarily you don't want to necessarily be going long 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning for this one. You can see there is sellers, but it's not as great. And then again, Russell, we literally called it right down at the bottom yesterday. And again, rallying back up again, but same scenario. Looking to the left, you can see that there's multiple different areas of sellers over here. And we talked about before, it had an alert set up at 2040. That was the last Harry Potter trade up top for shorts. I think you got to look at that level. You got to look at 2021. Just because of the response that we had here at a 1030 reversal. So, they're all kind of peaked up here. I think dropping into a 15 is probably going to make the most sense. And again, even oil, oil right now is continuing to go lower. It's 91.60. The big drop was there. Here was that move yesterday that we talked about. European session opened it and drove it down today. And again, it's continuing to drive back down to the 89.50. It is interesting they mentioned energy, but they only mentioned coal. They didn't mention gas. So seeing this come back down is not necessarily surprising. And yesterday's oil inventory, there was a surplus. It was not. It was not as big. It was definitely not as big as the API number.
What was it? 4.5 million versus 5.2 million or something.
Yeah,
something like that.
I don't even know. But it's not how much we have right now. 4.5 million is not really a big deal. It's are we going to cut supply to Russia? And as far we're 3 days in or 2 days in, and no one has actually gone after. We're in third level of sanctions, and no one's gone after the oil yet because it's it's too important. It's too important. So we can put a blind eye. We'll get rid of coal. We were already doing that. We're going to get rid of oil. No, shut up. We're not doing that. That's kind of right now. So,
all right. Well, then we kind of went through the charts. It's kind of interesting that the equity charts. It's the big sell-off with the recovery, and I mean this. If you turn this oil chart over that you're looking at right now, it would look like the equity chart of the S&P that I got up there. It's really kind of, it's almost a mirror image of what's going on. Interesting. So yeah, we kind of saw that coming yesterday. Today, don't know.
Again, all the commodities are down. It's not just oil. Oil's down 1.35. Natural gas is down 3%. Gold is down 0.9%, and silver's down 1.18%. Again, we talked about crushing gold and silver yesterday. Natural gas was up big yesterday. Again, it's pairing its gains yesterday with profit taking, and again, lack of any real news. Like I said, I think Ukraine ever makes that determination that they're going to cut energy going through the Ukraine, then watch those guys spike. But besides that, there's no other factors at this point that we need to necessarily worry about.
Yeah. And the one thing I would say on a Friday in uncertain times, Brian's you were talking about, we've got levels where there are going to be sellers.
Mm-hmm.
We've always talked about feel good Fridays where the market goes up. I wouldn't be surprised toward the end of the day or at some point you see people just taking risk off going into the weekend.
This would be one of those opportunities. But I will say, going in, being the last one of the week, Sunday night, there'll be some great levels to look at. Because again, we have 2.5 days to see what happens over the weekend. And then the market will have to play catch up on Sunday night. We could have it's probably going to be a very gappy weekend this weekend.
Yeah.
And again, means there'll be great trading opportunity for next week. And look at the extreme movement that we've had this week. Depending on where we start, it could be a great opportunity to take longer duration trades next week. So look at some of the weekly contracts. I know we don't really talk about weekly contracts much, but depending on where the gaps are, it could be actually a really great weekly contract. To be able to take for next week. Because again, will there be extreme movement? Probably. I mean, it is war.
Volatility, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
But getting it earlier in the week, you could definitely take some chances out there. In assuming that this week was the worst case scenario, maybe next week will be much, much better. And think about the extreme direction that we've had this week. You're already seeing extreme reversals on a weekly basis next week. If Russia says that, okay, that's it, the fighting has stopped, there's a ceasefire now. What does that do for the markets? I mean, there's some big opportunity next week as far as where things can move. So Sunday night should be a pretty interesting time for analysis.
100%. So and then we'll be cranking along on that on Monday morning. All right. With that, any questions for Nadex? Please reach out. Any questions for Nadex about the markets, about your account, about the platform? Please email customerservice@nadex.com. Any questions for Brian? His email is up there as well. support@keeptradingsimple.com. My email, even though it says todd.rich@ig.com, I know there were some questions. This transaction goes down. I am part of Nadex. I am going with Nadex. So whenever the acquisition by crypto.com goes down, this is staying. This morning show is staying. Our webinar program is staying. We'll probably be we'll definitely be firing up our boot camp sessions again. We did one just over a month ago. We did one a month before that. we'll get those going again. Once things settle down a little bit with the crypto acquisition. And with that, really, we saw those reversals yesterday. Markets are looking to open in the green. The equities are open a bit in the green today. There are some levels where we've seen sellers step in, so be looking at your levels on your charts. And then yeah, just remember, there might be some risk off towards the end of the day or starting midday because people don't want to go into a weekend with the uncertainty. And then we'll be back Monday morning to digest everything that occurred over the weekend and start putting a plan together for next week. Until then, good luck in the markets. We'll catch you on Monday. Thanks, everyone.